Hey, y'all. Welcome, our beloved community. Today, we're going to be looking at Paul's letter to the Ephesians, and we're going to take as a theme words spoken by Saint Teresa of Calcutta, better known to many of us as Mother Teresa. Powerful words that, in fact, were a huge inspiration in our very first gathering as a community at Mercy. She said, "We can do no great things, only little things with great love."
Come, Holy Spirit, renew the face of the earth. Set your people free. Come, Holy Spirit, renew your image in us. Heal our humanity.
As I spent some time this week with the lection from the letter to the Ephesians, I really was reminded of that saying of Mother Teresa, we can do no great things, only little things, small things, with great love. We've been looking at Ephesians in our community, and the beginning of Ephesians is Paul giving us the big picture, right, of what God has done in Jesus. It's the good news that is as vast as the entire cosmos. It's as big as the universe. God is up to something good. But in this part of Ephesians, Paul is helping us make the transition to where you and I live, because we don't always live in the big picture. Not that we don't need to have our minds aware of the larger picture, but we live in the little things. In fact, sometimes we can get overwhelmed by the big things, and we can even throw up our hands and say, hey, there's only so much that I can do. I can't do it. I can't handle that. There's nothing I can do about that. But the truth is, there is. But God chooses to work in little things. In fact, that's the whole mystery of the cross and the gospel, right? Paul's saying that God has done something cosmic, but he's talking about Jesus the Nazarene. He's talking about a poor Palestinian Jew in the first century who was crucified by the powers that be. And yet Paul says that poor Palestinian Jew has revolutionized everything. Well, you and I have a chance to do that as well. And it's not by focusing on what is the great thing that I can do. It's focusing on the little things, the things that sometimes we take for granted, yet are so full of God's grace. So Paul puts a lot of emphasis in this tiny lection that we're given this week on our relationships one with another. How do we relate to each other? And especially, how do we communicate with each other? So I just want to pull out a few things that Paul emphasizes, and hopefully they will speak to us. And the first thing Paul talks about is no lying. We got to quit lying to each other, and we got to start telling the truth with each other. Now, that's a pretty big deal. And I think a lot of us would say, well, I'm an honest person. I don't spend my time lying to folks. But what lies do we believe? Big lies or small lies? How do we deceive ourselves? Thomas Merton has this wonderful idea of what he calls the true self, which is who we're created in the image of God to be, and also includes our sinfulness and our brokenness, as well as our belovedness and our false self. The false self is that image, not that God created, but that image that we want to project to everybody else. And honestly, we want to project it back to ourselves. It's who we want to be, but we may not yet be. It's all the trappings that we decorate ourselves with, whether it's our wealth or it's our prestige or it's our power. Whatever it is that we use to decorate ourselves and lift up ourselves as if to say, look, I'm worthy, I'm enough because of all these things, right? But the truth is, we're worthy because of who God made us to be to begin with. It's God's love. It's God's love, right, that makes us worthy and enough. And so telling the truth and not lying includes telling the truth to ourselves and not lying. I've known a lot of folks who've struggled with addiction and who've worked recovery, and in particular the 12 steps. And I've found in those folks often, if they will sincerely work recovery, I've found those folks to be the most truthful, the most honest. They're folks who've come to love themselves and love themselves deeply, but to know themselves for who they are and to know where their weaknesses lie and to know where their struggles are and to be honest about the ways in which they've caused hurt or pain in the lives of others. See, if we can do that, then we're telling the truth. And if we can do that, then we're telling the truth in our relationships with one another. It brings healing. It brings wholeness. We need to quit lying to ourselves and lying to other folks. We need to start practicing truth because Paul says we are members one of another. I can't cast you off. I can't say, hey, you're not a part of me. You don't belong to me. You ain't got nothing to do with me. We are connected. Dr. King said we are bound together in a single garment of mutuality, right? That's who God has made us to be as human beings, and we can't escape it. We are interdependent upon each other. Not codependent, but interdependent upon one another. And so to practice the truth is not only to bring wholeness and health and life into my own individual life, but it is to bring life to my community. It's to enliven the relationships that I have with other folks. It's to create community where there's truthfulness practiced. The second thing that I kind of want to highlight, and there's so much here that we could talk about, but an important piece I've found in my life is how to handle anger. You notice Paul doesn't say, don't be angry. Paul doesn't say that. Paul says, be angry and sin not. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath and give place to the devil. Paul doesn't say, don't be angry. Paul recognizes that anger is, in fact, an emotion that is a gift from God. It is a feeling that puts us in touch with the sense that something's not right. Whenever we're angry, it's often, whether we're right or wrong, whether we've misperceived something or we're correct about it, it's because we sense that something's not right. Some injustice has taken place, perhaps to ourselves, perhaps to a neighbor, perhaps to someone else. But that makes us angry because we sense that isn't right. It isn't how things ought to be. And so what Paul's saying to us is, hey, you know what? Be angry. Recognize that anger. Pay attention to that anger, right? Try to figure out, why is it that you're angry? Is there something that's not right here that you need to pay attention to and be involved in helping somehow to make right? But Paul says, don't sin with that anger, right? Don't take that anger as a license to break relationships. Don't take that anger as a license to lash out and to cause more hurt and to cause more harm, or to seek vengeance as a way of undoing injustice. Paul says, be angry, identify the anger, find out what's wrong, but then work in a righteous way to set things right. The third little piece that I want to bring to us is this idea of how we talk to each other. How do we talk to each other? I mean, listen to what Paul says. Put away from you all bitterness and wrath and anger and wrangling and slander, together with all malice. Be kind to one another. Paul says earlier in verse 29, let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only what is useful for building up as there's need, so that your words may give grace to those who hear. We ought to think about that as we speak. The ways in which we talk to one another. Do our words give grace? Are our words full of graciousness? Can our words be understood as gifts? Do our words build up? Or do our words tear down? See, often a lot of the way that we sin when we're angry is with the words that we speak in our anger, as our rage fires within us, and we say things that we ought not say, that cause more hurt than harm. Whenever we speak the truth, which Paul was talking about earlier, Paul says elsewhere in Ephesians, speak the truth in love. There's a lot of folks who think they're telling the truth, but if you're not loving, you ain't telling the truth. Truth and love go together. Now, the last thing Paul says a lot here, but he says essentially walk in love. Walk in love. And I love the phrase, right? Because it gives us a sense of what loving is about. Love is a walk. It's not an event. It's not a one-off experience. Love's not a feeling. And love's also not a sprint. It's a walk. It can be slow. It can be tiring. It can be hard. You might stumble along the way of love, but walk in love. Because Paul said, and I love this imagery, and this brings us back to Mother Teresa, be imitators of God as dear children. Right? Where Paul's using the word that we get the word mimic, right? You ever seen a kid try to mimic an adult? It's funny sometimes, and sometimes it's humiliating because you're like, wow, do I do that? Yes, I do. And my kid is imitating me, right? But with God, we've got a parent that we can always mimic. And Paul says that's what the spiritual life is, y'all. You know, we go on retreats and we read books and we pay lots of money trying to figure out our spirituality. But Paul says, look, it's just being a kid and trying to act like the good God who loves us all. That's what we're called to do. Let us mimic God. Let us imitate God. Let's try to put on God's shoes, even though we're going to stumble. And let us walk in love. Let us be kind and compassionate. Because all those things we just talked about, telling the truth and not lying, learning how to handle our anger, being mindful of how we talk to each other, we all fall short. None of us fully live into that every day, all the time. So we need to be kind. We need to be gracious. We need to find a place for forgiveness. We need to work processes of reconciliation. Hold folks accountable? Absolutely. But let's find a way to redeem one another and not cast each other off. So next time you want to do something great, Mother Teresa says, that's not what you're built for. We can do no great things. But you know what you can do? Little things with great love.